In business news today, 3 things to know. First, new deal. President Barack Obama unveils his plan to ease visa restrictions between the U.S. and China. That's expected to be a big boost for business. Then, frozen zone. The Polar Vortex is headed our way, folks, bringing freezing temperatures that could disrupt business across the nation. And pay to sip. In tonight's corner office, turning your love for wine, which is mine, into a very lucrative and inexpensive business. Of course, we'll tell you how. The Rise Xchange starts right now. Well, hello, I'm Julian Phillips in for Andrew Schmertz. President Obama, along with other world leaders, traveled to Beijing to take part in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, a meeting the commander-in-chief says will strengthen ties between the U.S. and China. Well, the president announced today that the U.S. and China have agreed to a new visa policy for tourists and businessmen. That will be a big boost for both economies.
Keep in mind, last year, 1.8 million Chinese visitors to the United States contributed $21 billion to our economy and supported more than 100,000 American jobs. This agreement could help us more than quadruple those numbers.
Well, our Rise Washington Bureau Chief James Wu joins us from D.C. with more. James, welcome as always to a Rise Xchange. Look, we're talking about big numbers here. The president is saying this could bring in as much as $85 billion a year and help support 440,000 jobs.
Right, and basically what has happened, Julian, is that they're extending the time on visas that both businessmen and students can have validity to travel between the U.S. and China. In the past, Chinese visitors to the U.S. and U.S. visitors to China had to have their visas renewed on an annual basis. And so what they've done is for students, they've extended those visas to 5 years, and for business travelers, they extended those visas for 10 years. And it really will make it very possible for businessmen and for students who are going back and forth to actually spend time on the ground in each country, do more business, and sort of get things done.
You know, James, it sounds like a great idea. You know, there are a lot of things on the table over there at this summit here. The President Obama also will be meeting with leaders of the Trans-Pacific Partnership countries. Will that trade deal soon be completed?
You know, that trade deal they've been negotiating for quite a long time. And what it is, it's an attempt by the U.S. to sort of bind together the major nations of the Pacific from, you know, Vietnam all the way over again to Mexico, with the exception of China. And it's really trying to create a bulwark against China. It will encompass about 40% of the world's population and really will sort of be an attempt to bypass the sort of cheap labor and the goods that China has supplied to so many of the countries of the world to try to contain some of that. There's a real good sense. The president hosted a meeting of the TPP leaders today at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. There's some sense that they're close to a deal.
Okay, you know, the fact that President Obama was met like with a rock star brigade over there, like a red carpet of the Oscars, he and other world leaders. But there are a lot of other things that are on the plate here that could be roadblocks. We're talking about possibly human rights, environmental concerns, of course, as well as cyber attacks, which we're going to talk about in this show. How will those affect progress in terms of trade and all sorts of agreements?
Well, you know, President Obama really, I think, said today that there are certain things that the U.S. believes in and that the U.S. will hold true no matter what the conditions or issues are. And he was really referring to the protests in Hong Kong, that there are some truths and some things and ideals that the U.S. just holds above all others, which will be the basis in which they will engage, the country will engage with countries like China. I think the president is expecting to get something out of the summit, and clearly the visa deal that was just announced today is just the preview of what's to come.
Lastly, James, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Vladimir Putin. Did President Barack Obama meet with him, or does he expect to?
Well, you know, they had a very short chance meeting in the corridors today. According to White House officials that we've contacted, there is a plan for a longer sit-down meeting during the course of the summit, and the hope is that there will be some progress on Ukraine. But, you know, they've announced many deals in Ukraine before, so we'll just have to see what happens on the ground.
And the drama continues. James Wu, thank you for your insights, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see how the markets responded to the news. Here's a look at the final numbers. The Dow closing up to 17,613. The S&P 500 closing up to 2038, and the NASDAQ end of the day also closing up to 4651. The top stocks we're watching today. McDonald's saw no growth in sales in the U.S. over the last 12 months. In fact, McDonald's is reporting its customer base is shrinking across the country. McDonald's closing at $95.11. Yum Brands, the parent company of Pizza Hut, announcing a major change from everything to its look to its ingredients. Pizza Hut is rolling out a new menu, including new flavors and a variety of sauces. Yummy Yum Brands closing at $73.27. They're having it your way, folks. Burger King says it is hitting the ground in India. The fast food chain says it will open its first 12 outlets in India over the next 90 days, according to the CEO. Burger King closing at $32.41. Now for a look at commodities. Gold closing at $1,147.30 an ounce, and oil closing at $77.27 per barrel. Good for the pump. And just how will this new visa policy between the U.S. and China affect the markets? Well, let's ask S&P Capital IQ Chief Equity Strategist Sam Stovall, who joins us now. My goodness, Sam, this whole visa policy, I mean, it seems like a good deal at face value. I mean, sometimes when things seem to be too good, it's really not that good. Tell us about this.
Well, I think what the president's trying to do is really sort of push the question of immigration by using this to wrap around the conversation that's going on here in the U.S. as well. What gets proposed in China might not necessarily get approved here in the U.S., but I think it opens up the conversation.
We're talking about supporting 440,000 jobs. Those are the estimates by experts right now. But, you know, a lot of people here are concerned about new jobs. You know, the stock market doing well. They're saying the economy seems like it's doing well, but the job market, the jobs. Do you think this will actually create any new jobs with these visas?
Well, I think that's the hope. The concern really is that whatever jobs are available here, the worry is that there could be some that are taken away. But with the unemployment rate now below 6%, with the broadest measure of unemployment called the U6 now down at around 11.5%, very low compared with what it's been over the last several years, I think people are feeling better about employment, but still the wages growth is not there. And as a result, it's really just barely keeping up with inflation.
Sure.
So you really don't have an increase in purchasing power by the middle class.
Well, see, that's key. And I want to focus on that and hone that a little bit more. Unemployment, as you said, fell to a 6-year low right now. Now, the Feds came out with a new indicator here that they say it has like 19 different job market indicators that is just more than what a unemployment number can tell you. And they're looking at part-time jobs, they're looking at full-time jobs, and they're saying now we have a better perspective. Based upon what Janet Yellen and the Feds are saying, do you think this new indicator is something that we can actually rely on that will tell us whether or not the economy actually is doing better?
Well, I think we have to see how it differs from one that's been around over the last 20 years. The U6, as I just mentioned, is the broadest measure. It measures unemployment, underemployment. So if you're not really working at the job you trained for, but you're working part-time, or if you are disgruntled and you've walked away, in a sense you could say it's a mirror image. It's an opposite effect because it scoops up all the people who are employed rather than all of the people who are unemployed, underemployed, or have just said, I give up.
Interesting. Let's focus back now on APEC and where the president is, and of course a lot of other world leaders here. A whole lot of hoopla about that. I mentioned they had a whole red carpet thing there. You'd think you were in Hollywood. How will this meeting, this summit, affect the markets, in your opinion?
Well, I think it affected the markets today just based on what the president said about the internet, about cable TV, talking about regulating it the way he would utilities. Certainly a lot of the cable companies were not very happy with that and sold off on the news today. So I think there's an awful lot that gets discussed. In many ways, it's like Davos in Switzerland. It's like G20 meetings. A lot of things get said, but in the end, what really gets done?
Well, and that's my point. You have this kumbaya effect for a while. You mentioned Davos. Of course, we were there. Xchange was there, Andrew Schmertz. And now we have this. We have the APEC. All right, so the markets go up a little. We see a bump today. Overall, though, especially what's going on now with this news now that the Chinese might be behind a cyber attack, in the long run, do you think this will make much of a difference?
Well, I think China is the engine of growth in Asia, the engine of opportunity for investors around the globe. The big concern is what will the growth rates be for this year and next year. 2 years ago, they were growing in the high 7% on a GDP basis. Then it was in the middle 7%. Now it's at the low end of 7%. So whatever activities they can embrace that's going to propel innovation, economic cooperation, and expansion, I think a lot of investors will feel very good about. But they're still saying that the U.S. is the best house on an otherwise bad block.
Wow. I hope that's not a nightmare down the road, but good news so far. Sam Stovall, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Julian.
Okay. Coming up, below freezing temperatures on the way. How will it impact business? When Arise Xchange returns, we'll tell you how.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Welcome back to Arise Xchange. The Polar Vortex, I hate those two words. It's making a comeback, unfortunately. The bone-chilling cold, snow and ice that gripped much of the country last year affected more than 200 million people and brought about one of the biggest economic disruptions delivered by the weather. So what can we expect this year? AccuWeather senior meteorologist Bernie Rayno joins us by phone with more. Bernie, come on, another polar vortex? You got to be kidding me.
Well, listen, the polar vortex is always there. It never leaves. You know what happened with this current pattern is that the pattern, it's not the polar vortex that brings all the cold. It's the pattern that displaces the polar vortex a little farther south, and when that happens, the cold air comes a lot farther south. That's what we're seeing right now across the upper Midwest and the Plain States. Okay, so Bernie, we're expecting that we will probably have a very severe and extremely cold and snowy winter like we had, I guess, last year. Is that what you're saying? Well, what we're thinking is that it is going to be a colder than normal winter. Now, it remains to be seen whether it will be as cold as what we had last year. Boy, last year was just a nasty winter, especially in the upper Midwest, where it compares to some of the coldest winters we've seen in like 76, 77. But it certainly appears that it's going to be colder than normal, certainly from the much of the eastern half of the United States. And you know, with the cold, you know what I'm going to bring up next. It's going to be the threat for snow and snowstorms, and it certainly looks as though that this winter will resemble what we saw last winter. Well, it remains to be seen how cold it's going to be.
Right.
I think you have to be prepared for that.
Okay, well, you were my new best friend, but I'm going to sing chestnuts roasting on an open fire. I'm going to have plenty of chestnuts and wine and maybe whiskey by the fireplace this winter. Look, this is a business show. How will this weather affect the economy?
Well, weather affects everything, and certainly economy is no different. Now, we talked about cold. That may put pressure on heating oils, certainly, and natural gas. It will put pressure. It may not be the overriding reason, but certainly it's going to put pressure. We also know with the possibility of snow, that is going to be impacting travel.
Right.
And certainly that could be on the roadways and at the airports, and certainly a lot of municipalities had to spend quite a bit of money last year with salt and overtime time with plows, and that is certainly going to be another possibility. And keep in mind, with that being in the Midwest and Northeast, that's a heavily populated part of the United States.
Absolutely. We know that the major cities in the Northeast as well as the Midwest spend a lot of money on salt, and they may, those budgets probably be busted probably midway before the winter is over. And then, of course, the airline industry also will be affected by all this.
Well, certainly will. And we even had some problems today, certainly around Minneapolis. Luckily, this storm stayed north of the major hubs, such as Detroit and Chicago, but this cold air is coming in toward Denver. That will have an impact on Denver as we go through the rest of tonight and tomorrow. But this storm is occurring a little farther north than a lot of the population.
Yeah.
Certainly, you're going to see these storm threats come farther south as we go over the next couple of months.
All right. Well, Bernie, I think that Santa Claus may be stuck in somebody's fireplace. We'll see what happens. But anyway, I guess I should say thank you for this news. I don't know.
No, it's not a problem. It goes with the territory, Julian.
You got it, my friend. Thanks a lot.
All righty.
Okay, time now for our business ticker. Stories making headlines across the nation and indeed around the world. GM recall. Not again. New documents show GM placed an emergency order for 500,000 ignition switch replacement parts to its supplier, Delphi Automotive, 2 months before it issued a massive recall affecting more than 2.6 million vehicles. This revelation calls into question what GM CEO Mary Barra knew about the faulty switches and when. She has denied knowing about the ignition switch problem beforehand. The net neutrality debate heats up, and President Obama weighs in, recommending the Federal Communications Commission ban higher fee fast lanes and argues internet service providers should be regulated like public utilities. More than 4 million people have contacted the FCC to keep the internet equal for everyone. Well, doomsday prepping goes luxury, guys. A former Cold War-era missile silo in Kansas, get this, has been transformed into a 15-story underground condo that can withstand a nuclear attack and hold up to 75 people. Now, for a minimum of $1.5 million, you can purchase a survival condo. It comes with 5 years of freeze-dried, dehydrated food per person. I don't know about that, guys. Anyway, ahead, those cyber hackers are at it again. We'll tell you who is the latest target and who just may be behind those attacks. You're watching Rise Exchange.
Because we live in a global, interconnected world, business news no longer stops when the markets close on Wall Street. And what we've discovered over the past few years of the financial crisis is that events and news that happen even in the smallest countries impact the United States and the world at large. As we bring together experts and analysts and thought leaders and CEOs and companies across many industries to not only provide the macroeconomic view, but news everyday people can use.
The search continues for the more than 200 abducted schoolgirls.
Unquestionably, this is a Nigerian problem.
President Barack Obama stopped short of visiting the border. Why can't Washington get anything done when it comes to immigration reform?
But you got to come up with a solution to it, and no one has a real solution.
Does this further terrorize people, make them more afraid, or is this making people angry? Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
Welcome back. Okay, it's a huge problem that's growing by the day. Cyber attacks threatening the welfare of both businesses and individuals globally. Well, today, the United States Postal Service says Chinese government hackers are suspected of breaching its computer network, comprising the data of more than 800,000 employees. Now, as companies deal with the cost to protect itself, employees are also left to help foot the bills, of course. Well, world-renowned cybersecurity expert and friend, Berkeley Variatronic CEO and friend to the show, Scott Schober, joins us now to break it all down. Scott, say it ain't so.
It's so. They did it again. The
Okay.
Chinese didn't give up.
I mean, look. President Barack Obama is now over, of course, for the
They're in
APEC
Beijing,
summit.
yeah.
And this news is announced, I guess, probably before he touches down in Beijing. The Chinese. It seems like it's the Chinese. What's going on here?
Yeah, in this case, I think with the U.S. Postal Service, a little bit different. It appears to be more espionage, gathering of large amounts of employees' data, 800,000. That's huge. Plus all those that have called in on the call-in center or emailed from January till about August. And just last year alone, they took about 83 million calls and emails and just the process for customer support. So if you look at that, that's probably what, 60 million people that have called in customers where their credentials could have been compromised as well. So it's a pretty big number. It's concerning.
All right, but Scott, what we understand so far is that the general public really right now is not affected by this, primarily just employees. So what was compromised?
Yeah, primarily employees. But the part that's very concerning, it's not just names, it's employment date, email, address, and also social security number. And that's one that you really don't want to have out there, because obviously if somebody does get social security number for any individual, they can use that for identity theft and a lot of other things. Probably not the intent of the Chinese that have hacked this to go try to take out identity for the information, but rather mining this data, big data for government-related employees for a bigger picture, for espionage, I believe.
We were talking the other day on Arise News about the dark web. You know, of course, that was started for something good by naval intelligence in this country, and of course, the evildoers, you know, have taken it over. And it seems like every time you find something that can stop it, you know, the evil folks find something even better. I guess the question is for the average person. It almost seems like there's nothing that the average person can do, and even companies can do, to stop these kinds of cyber attacks and hacks.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So what can we do as a consumer or somebody watching this? Minimize the amount of information you put out there. We hear it again and again, but social networks, don't put too much information out there about yourself, where you live, your spouse's name, the high school you attended. All those things are little pieces of a bigger puzzle that if somebody did want to compromise or attack you or take out maybe credit in your name, identity theft, all these different things, it makes their job so much easier. So just minimize the amount of information that is out there. It would help greatly.
I guess, Scott, the most important thing that anybody could do, instead of using any kind of card or plastics, is to use cash.
Yeah, cash is king.
But
There's
who
nothing wrong with
carries
that.
cash these days? You carry cash?
I do, yeah.
You must have been a Boy Scout.
No.
You were always prepared.
No, but I do know the risks of carrying traditional credit cards. And if we look at the likes of Home Depot and Target and many other retailers, it's a huge cost. I mean, it cost probably Home Depot, the recent breach, it cost them in the neighborhood of about $60 million so far. The banks, $160 million. Big bucks are being spent to cover the reissuing of cards, the cleanup of credit, the credit monitoring. There's costs involved.
I understand, though, there's some good news out there. Apparently, some of the banks now and credit card issuers are putting together some new kind of card that doesn't have the strip on it, but some kind of chip. How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. Well said. It's really a chip and pin. It's an embedded microprocessor inside of the credit card. So at your point of purchase, you have to enter an additional third factor, which is actually a password, which only you hopefully remember in your head, to minimize if they steal the information on your credit card, nobody knows your secret PIN, to make it that much safer. It's been used in Europe and globally very successfully.
And of course, like everything else, it comes here last.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're first. You're first.
Yes.
Who's on first?
That's
Scott
right.
Schober, thank you, as always, sir. Appreciate you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next, turn your love of wine into big business. We'll tell you how when Arise Xchange returns. Stay with us.
Apple unveiled new products today. Did it meet expectations?
Apple stock is up 20%.
The White House says it has proper measures to contain the spread of Ebola.
This seems to be, in some ways, exploding. What are officials saying?
We remain focused on working with our partners on the ground to stop the epidemic.
Enhanced measures have been put in place in Africa and the United States.
This is hitting home in a very real way, and I think, we need to be concerned.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
There's certain news programs that have a Democrat and a Republican, and all they do is, here's the Democrat saying his side, and the Republican say, it's a little debate show, but not everybody is a sort of an extremist on one side or the other. People are in the middle a lot more.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Last week on Arise Xchange, a victory lap for Republicans while Democrats lick their wounds.
The Democrats are saying they just didn't have a ground game.
Gold prices fell sharply today as the dollar soared in the wake of the U.S. elections. Zachary Torrance says he tried the Subway diet, and when it failed, he decided that he would rob 4 Subway sandwich shops in 4 days as revenge for his inability to lose weight. Now he will be on a prison diet. Watch this week for more Arise Xchange.
My God, I'm loving this. I'm loving it. In tonight's corner office, a new way to sell wines with in-home tasting parties. Boisset Wine. Living at Home is a relatively new social marketing program developed by the Boisset family estates. Ambassadors for the company arrange parties and educate attendees about Boisset wines made in California. In the past few years, the division has grown from 8 to a few hundred ambassadors. I might become one. Here to tell you more is the owner, Jean-Charles Boisset. Welcome, Jean-Charles.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, mon ami or garçon. And I've got to tell you, I hate a man who comes dressed better than me. What's wrong with you?
You look very charming as well, and I love your pochette. That brings you the wine style to life.
Oh, there we go.
Well, we're going to have a sip.
Okay, what do we have here? What are we drinking?
All ambassadors always start the tasting with JCB number 69, which is a Burgundy sparkling wine, very high-end, 18 months age in the bottle, which delicately caresses your palate and bring celebration to your mouth and to your friends.
Now, Jean-Charles, one of my producers says, hold the stem, hold the stem. I'm holding whatever I want to hold.
Well, and it's called number JCB 69, so you go and figure it provides pleasure to anybody who touches it.
Okay, we want to quickly go through the wines because we want to get to the business and the economics of this whole thing. What do we have next?
Afterwards, you're going to try
a
Chardonnay from Raymond Vineyards in the heart of Napa.
Right.
And then we're going to try another red wine. But what is very exciting is this new opportunity provides ambassadors, people who have 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, very flexible schedule to be able to start their own wine business and bring the tasting room to someone's home, their homes, to a bar, anywhere.
So are you selling your wines, your product in stores as well?
As well, so it's a different sets of wine, which is actually selected for the Wine Living program. And it's the extension of the tasting room. So whatever we have in our tasting room in Napa, Sonoma, Burgundy, you could bring it to life in someone else's living room.
I tell you, I'm going to be like James Carville. Boy, I'll tell you, this tastes good with pigs in a blanket.
Perfect for Thanksgiving.
To say the least. My God.
And everything else.
And what do we have here? What next?
The next wine is the Sheriff.
Yes.
So this is one of the first winery ever in the wine world. First California winery founded in 1857 called Buena Vista Winery. And the count who founded it was the first sheriff in Southern California. So we started a wine named the legendary badge, the Sheriff.
I bet you I could arrest a ribeye and have a great deal with this. Now,
without being arrested.
Now, look, this is kind of lucrative for an ambassador.
This is amazing. This is something I've always wanted to do in my life. Over the last 20 years, I finally did it a few years ago with an amazing team of people. It allows everybody to get in the wine business with a few $100s. They have their own website, haute selection of wine. They go present wine, taste wine, have fun with friends, and they make 30 to 35% on every bottle of wine they sell.
That is amazing.
And then we have a wine club as well named the Boisset Wine Society, which if you sell $100,000 of wine, you make $35,000, which is pretty significant when you think about it.
Typically, what kind of person do you find for
Well, it's everybody who wants to have a flexible schedule, their own business, who's very social, who has a lot of friends, who is at home or not at home, and people who enjoy food, people who enjoy art, people who enjoy, interactions.
But see, here's my thing, though. I mean, it sounds great, and I know it is, but see, if everybody looked like you, see, I could bring you over to my neighborhood,
Julian, you are an ambassador. Are you signing in?
I might as well.
Yes!
You see what I have to do, though? I have to open up my shirt. I have to show the hairs on my chest.
Well, you have much better
I love
hair
this.
than
I don't know about that.
Look at that smile and that speech. I need to learn
I don't
from
have
you.
the coif, though. Jean-Charles.
Well, which is exciting, though, it's accessible to everybody. So it's 75% to 80% women. They had kids, they want to go back into the workplace, but on a flexible way. Or some people who are in transition, or some people who love just entertaining, who loves to cook, who loves to receive. And the beauty of it, what I love about it, is the wine world is accessible to everyone.
Well, I'll tell you, this sounds like a really great concept. I like this. I like to cook, I like to receive, and
And you like to drink wine.
I like to drink, Jean-Charles. Thank you so
Santé,
much.
mon ami.
Santé.
Welcome.
Garçon. Well, folks, tomorrow on Arise Exchange, the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba kicks off the world's biggest online shopping day of the year, celebrating the single life. Now for another look at how the markets did today. The Dow closing up at 17,613. The S&P 500 closing up to 2038, and the NASDAQ end of the day also closing up to 4651. I'm Julian Phillips along with Jean-Charles. In for Andrew Smirtsy Smirts. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.